Wake up, Twins territory. This is Twins Hangouts. It is a special Wednesday edition following last night's All-Star game. So Seth and I are going to hang out with you tonight. We have a bunch of stuff to talk about. We're going to make it a point to only roll for 90 minutes as
Uh-huh.
opposed to our marathon sessions that we have had over the last few weeks. So,
Sure.
Seth, how you doing tonight?
Doing great. I'm really looking forward to this 90-minute or less podcast that we're absolutely going to do tonight.
So, how you been?
Well, I think, maybe not quite as busy as you. I've maybe been in the car a little bit more, but, it's been a pretty interesting last week since we last had a show. You've been to the cities a few times, huh?
Um, yeah, I went to Fan Fest on Friday morning. That was neat. Um, it was kind of when they were still working out the bugs out there, advertised as Kids Day. So it was me and three kids, 6 and younger, that went up there and came back Friday and didn't go back up Saturday, but went up Sunday for the color run. Drove back from the cities to my home to shower and scrub off the color. Immediately got back in my car and drove up. Found you hanging outside of Target Field. Hung out till about 11 o'clock that night or so. I don't even remember. It was a long day. It was a fun day. Um, didn't go up for the Derby, and then went back up yesterday at about noon and did the All-Star thing and got home at about midnight. So it's hard for me to even remember what day it is anymore because it felt like a really, really, really long weekend. Um, so that was my extended weekend in a nutshell. Tell us about yours.
Well, mine involved driving halfway down from the top of the state to halfway down Friday night, and then driving the rest of the way Saturday morning. And like you, I went to Fan Fest. I went with my daughter and my brother and sister on Sunday morning. It was good. A lot of stuff there. It was pretty crazy, but she enjoyed it a little bit, and we enjoyed it. And then I got dropped off at Target Field for the Futures game about 12:30, so an hour and a half before gates opened. But it was kind of fun to kind of just be part of the atmosphere. I thought it was pretty cool out there. But yeah, I mean, I think we would both safely say we enjoyed watching um, the Futures game. It was fun, I know, for me and probably for you as well, to kind of get to know some people who either have listened to this show or read Twins Daily, or a combination of both. So for those of you that we did hang out with, that was a lot of fun. Yeah, but then we did a little podcast with Mr. Bonus in between the Futures game and the start of the um, celebrity softball game, which I think surprised both of us, that the popularity of that celebrity softball game. But it was a lot of fun to be part of that, and then the fireworks, and then frankly, I drove back all the way up here on Monday morning, and I'm sorry, on Monday. I left the Twin Cities area sometime around 10, and I got back to my place around 8, just in time to watch the home run derby. So perfect timing.
So some non-baseball things that are interesting that happened. When Seth said he got dropped off, he actually forgot the keys to the vehicle that he was supposed to drive in. So that
Yeah,
added some excitement to his
Yeah,
weekend.
we kind of had an interesting scenario where obviously I was the only one with a ticket, thanks to yours truly, by the way, to the Futures game. But we did have 4 tickets to the Fan Fest, so we took 2 vehicles in and parked one of them, and I was supposed to grab the key to the other one and didn't do that. So, but we made it work, and a big thanks to Brandon Warren and his wife for driving me part of the way afterwards at 11 o'clock at night.
My non-baseball highlight of the weekend, non-baseball actual event, was during
Uh-oh.
the Futures game. Seth knows where I'm
Yeah.
going here because this is
I do
fantastic.
know where you're going here. This is bad.
We both uh, we both had the hankering for a big old bowl of nachos. So we both got them at the same time. Got all the fixins on top. And if you've never had the souvenir helmet with the nachos in it at Target Field, it's definitely something worth getting. And I don't know, was it like $13? So
Yeah, something like that.
$13 worth of chips and cholesterol upping fixings. And I would say about 16, 17 minutes into my bowl, I looked down and I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna finish this. But being the
But you
guy that
did.
I am, I did. I was like, you know what? There's kids starving, and I'm gonna eat this whole bowl of nachos. And then I looked over at Seth, and he looked like he was at about the same place that I was about 5 minutes earlier, where I just didn't think it was gonna happen for me. And he expressed this. He actually expressed it out loud to me and said, "I don't think I can finish this." To which I replied, "Finish it."
So
And
I took
Seth,
about three more bites.
being the guy that he is, decided he was going to finish it. Only 3 bites later, I look over, and poor Seth is kneeled down, hands, arms, forearms resting on the railing. And I thought that, we had been standing all day, so at first I thought you were just resting. And I said, Seth, how you doing? And very slowly he stands up and says, I think I'm going to throw up.
I think I said the word vomit.
Maybe that's what it was. But
Well,
you
we should
didn't.
also tell people that I was maybe halfway done with the helmet full of nachos as
You were
well. So
over
frankly,
halfway done.
barely half. I mean, it was maybe a little bit. I had to, unfortunately, with all the starving people out there, I had to get rid of some of it, and yeah, it was pretty close to vomit inducing. It tasted great. I mean, it was wonderful. Lots of jalapenos, but yeah, I just couldn't do it.
I would say when you didn't think you were going to get it done, I would say you had about 30% of the bowl left,
Yeah,
and
that's probably fair.
you ate another 5 to 10% before you waved the white flag. So
Yeah, but then I like set it on the ground, thinking, oh, maybe I'll have more later, or I just need to get it away from me. And then I would look down at it, and it would just make my stomach turn. So I had to like look straight ahead. There were a couple of times I had to go move further into the concourse just to make sure, that I had some airflow in my facial region so I could breathe properly. Um, yeah, it was scary there for a few minutes.
it was touch and go. But the best part is every time you see that collectible helmet in your house, you will think about those nachos. Probably have to swallow hard a couple times just to
Uh,
move on and do the next thing in your daily routine.
yeah, it's already making me feel ill just thinking about it.
That
So I'm
was it.
glad you brought that up.
That was fun. The fireworks was fun. Um, and
I
apparently
enjoyed
they
it.
did that again.
Fireworks are fun.
Yeah, and apparently they did that again Monday night, only much later, and that you know people were real happy about it. But that was really neat. The celebrity softball game was a lot of fun, and I left Sunday thinking, and I mean we were sitting, it kind of cleared out a little bit, and we were sitting 20 rows behind home plate, and I even asked you, I said, how far is the drive to Cincinnati? Because the
Yeah.
All Star game's in Cincinnati next year, and if I could just go to one day of the 3 or the 4 or whatever it is, I would go Sunday. I mean, it was neat. It wasn't a gimmicky thing like the home run derby really seemed to be. The All Star game was just so crowded. It was a ton of fun, but that Sunday it's pretty laid back. You get to see just a lot of stuff go on, and it's affordable. The tickets that we had were $30, which was twice the face value of the seats that we would sit in the regular season, which is twice the price as opposed to like 12 times the price, which the All Star game tickets were for a seat. So that
And
was
you
neat.
said
I
the
was
home
also
run derby was that much too, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, the face value on my seats, it was 30 for the Futures game, 155 for the Home Run Derby, and 175 for the All Star game tickets. So there was a
It's
little
like
bit
I
of
feel like we shouldn't talk about that too much because I hope, with how many people packed Target Field for the Futures game and then even more came in later for the celebrity softball game. It's like we don't want to tell people that they could probably have gotten away with charging more, because you're absolutely right. I mean, for that $30, we were able to spend essentially 8.5 hours at Target Field, walking around, seeing, future stars, seeing, Jose Barrios and Jose Barrios, or however we want to say that,
uh,
Kenneth Vargas and Alex Meyer. We went into Herbeck's later in the night, and we saw, who was it? Kent Herbeck, Rick Aguilera, Tim Laudner, and Randy Bush just sitting around at a table. It's just the atmosphere at Target Field's always awesome. But when you've got that kind of crowd with that kind of excitement and that kind of media presence and all of that kind of coming together, it was quite the experience. But I was going to ask you too a little bit. We both went to Fan Fest, so we can talk more about that if you want. But you didn't go to the Home Run Derby, and you did go to the All Star Game. But I want to ask you about that red carpet parade and what your thoughts were of that, because there were a lot of pictures being tweeted out throughout that parade, and I just sat there thinking, that would be pretty cool to be part of or just to witness.
Yeah, well, my dad and I left where we were coming from around noon. Um, and we figured we'll get up there at 1, we'll go do whatever we want to do for a while. And my intention was to still park where I always park. Well, as we got closer to that area, we realized that the road was closed off. And we knew that there was a parade that was going to go by. I just didn't, realize what side I needed to be, in relationship to that parade. And we ended up parking maybe 3 blocks short of where we normally park. And 2 blocks away, the road was blocked off. I said, well, that must be that parade. And I didn't know when it started. I didn't know where it was. I didn't really know anything about it. But we just walked, up. I think it was on Nicollet, and we walked up 2nd Avenue. And as we got to Nicollet, it was like 6 or 7 people deep at the lightest. So you're talking on both sides of the road. There's like 7, sometimes more people just packed between the gate and where I was standing. And I looked at my dad and I'm like, I don't even, I'm just going to keep walking. And he's like, yeah, that sounds good. So we walked, and I don't know exactly where it turned, but it turned down, it actually turned down 7th Street. And what I had done then is I realized that the Skyway had a lot of traffic, but a lot of the traffic was moving traffic. So we popped up. I said, let's go into this store. It was Marshall's, to see if we can see what's going on and see the guys. And we ended up going into the Skyway. I no lie, I tweeted a picture of this. Saw Lavelle E. Neal sitting with his back to the parade, getting his shoe shined in the mall. That happened. And proceeded to find an area that I could see through a window, and I watched maybe 10 minutes of the parade. But as we got closer to like the Foot Locker that was there, it was only 1 or 2 people deep. And at the turn, when we turned, you couldn't get between the street and the building because it was just packed with people. At one point, we just kind of walked right up, and David Price went by and waved. I took a picture of him. Robinson Cano went by, waved, took a picture of him. And that was sort of the end of the parade. But there was tens of thousands of people just on the street in the middle of the day. The red carpet thing was happening more towards Target Field. And when we got there to go in, we actually got up there. Nothing was happening. We went back to Hubert's, had a drink, and then walked back, and the lines started to get really long. So we got in line before we got to see the guys on the red carpet. And those lines were long, and with the metal detectors too. That took quite a while. So we were happy to just get in. And speaking of big food, my dad and I went to Herbeck's, and it was pretty light, and this was right after the gates opened, and he wanted some onion rings. And those onion rings, I don't even, they must be onions on steroids, because it was, the diameter of those, of the biggest onion ring was probably like 7 inches. And it was just stupid big. Like, that was one time where I said, you know what, I'm not gonna eat anymore. And then we did the flag thing, which was neat. It was neat to be on the field. We were on the field for probably 20 to 25 minutes. They wouldn't let us take any pictures. But the underrated part of that was, as we waited on the ramp, which was where all the families accessed the stadium. So Mike Trout's brother. I mean, it was Mike Trout's brother for sure because it looked just like him. Walked by. You know, basically everybody's family walked right by us. Cano's family walked by. I think it must be a son or a relative, probably 5 years old. He just walked by, looked up at me, so we had a little knuckle session. Johnny Cueto's kid walked by, gave him knuckles. Flash Gordon walked by. I was like, "Hey, Flash Gordon!" He turned and waved. And Nick Gordon must have a little brother because there was another younger Gordon that was there too. So that was really neat. Bud Selig walked by, 15 feet away. Hank Aaron rode in on like a golf cart. It was just neat to see, everybody in town for that, and then to stand on the field and see 40,000 people around and see the flyover from the field. It was a really neat experience. It's too bad that they said. I mean, they made it pretty clear there's no pictures, but you know, the whole thing in itself was a pretty neat deal.
More important, what would they have done if you would have actually taken a picture? Would they have like arrested you or thrown you under the flag, or what would have happened there?
Well, there was supposed to be a practice yesterday morning, and that's supposed to be there was. So, when I was invited, they asked about that, and I said, my dad has to work because it was basically a thing for teachers. So a lot of people, are off, but I wanted my dad to come with, and he was working. And I had some stuff I had to do. I said, we live an hour away. We're not going to drive in. And they said, that's no problem. So we met where we were supposed to meet, and there was I think there was 8 people that didn't show up for the practice out of, it was around 150 people. And so they put us on the head and the tail of the flag, which essentially is the group that will walk out but won't hold the flag when you walk out. When they start pulling the flag apart, we jump on the narrower sides of the flag. But the last thing they said to us before we went out was put all your recording devices, cell phones, anything away. And I asked the guy behind me who was at the practice, I said, what's that about? And he said, well, this flag, it's a heavy deal, and they don't want people taking their hands off the flag to take pictures, which makes a ton of sense because, I mean, my body was at like a 45-degree angle because I was pulling back so hard. And if any wind gets underneath it, you're going away. So I said, okay, well, that makes sense. But then as we came out and I realized we're going to be standing for a while, I just turned. I mean, I pulled out my phone and just took a quick shot of, like, the people in front of me. And then I just hit the button to flip it around, and then I just leaned it back and took a picture of me. And then I put it in my pocket. But it's like I wanted to take a picture of all the other stuff. And one of the Twins guys was standing at the end of the line, and I just said, hey, can I just take my phone out and take a picture? And he looked at me and he goes, absolutely not.
Wow.
And that was it. So
Told you.
I had heard before that if they tell you specifically to not do something and then you do it, that there's been people that have had their season tickets revoked, things like that. But it's like, at that point I'm thinking, okay, so I take my picture out and, they probably aren't going to do anything there, but they could escort me out of the stadium right after I get done holding my flag. Right. And now I just paid, I'm not even at the All-Star game anymore. So right. I don't know if they would have done that. Maybe it would have been a slap on the wrist, but nobody seemed to take their phone out and try to snap a picture. So, it is what it is. It was a neat experience. TCNL took a picture. She found me. She took a picture and posted it on Twitter. So I'm on the field. No, it was a neat deal, and it was nice to do, and obviously it's going to be a while before the All-Star game ever comes back to the city. So to be able to do that was pretty fun. And apparently my older brother had watched a game and said that when the AL was announcing their people, that he could see me in the background. So there was my 15 seconds of relatively going unnoticed of fame, I guess.
National television.
That's right. We don't all get to be on
it. Nope.
So 20 minutes in, we've covered that. We should talk about a couple other things, though. We should talk about the celebrities on Sunday.
Okay.
Who are you most excited to see in the celebrity softball game?
Melanie, whatever her name is. Iglesias, Melanie
And
Iglesias, and Jenny Finch.
exactly. Now tell us about Jenny Finch.
Well, actually at FanFest on Sunday morning, she did a clinic for a bunch of kids on a field that they kind of had set up there. And the first thing you notice is she's tall, like really tall. Also has a very nice smile and great hair. Um, but yeah, she did a good job of teaching proper form to the kids and how to throw properly and swing at soft toss and stuff like that. So I mean, it was a very impressive display
And then on Sunday at the celebrity game, she comes in as a relief pitcher
for John Smoltz.
to face the golden boy, Adrian Peterson,
Yep.
who, for as athletic as he is, he's not much for a softball player.
No, little bit too much muscle boundness or something.
But he decides that he's going to ask for the fastball and proceeds to not even see it go by him as he swings. And the facial expression that he made afterwards was priceless. In fact, they played it yesterday during the All-Star game and had 40,000 people chuckling because they played it in slow-mo. But if you haven't seen that, that's worth a Google and a bookmark, because that's a face of that he's probably left defensive backs and linebackers with, and they think they're going to tackle him, and he slips out the gate. But it just looks silly. Jim Thome was pretty impressive, even though he didn't hit any out of the actual stadium. Didn't even win their home run derby. But there was just a lot of stuff that was really neat that day. But I thought Jenny Finch for you was probably a big-time highlight.
Yep. Well, absolutely. That's absolutely true. But honestly, getting to see Nelly in person was pretty awesome too. Kind of a big fan of Nelly, ever since seeing him on the old MTV Rock and Jock football games and stuff like that. You always thought he could have been a pretty good athlete, if he chose the other direction rather than music, which he's obviously made a little money and had some long-term fame regarding that. But yeah, he had 2 home runs in the game. It was just a lot of fun. Zach Parise looks like he could play multiple sports. Maya Moore played that afternoon for the Lynx at Target Center, and then came over and played a little softball. So it was just kind of a lot of fun. I mean, and yeah, Melanie Iglesias.
That's it. That's all.
That's all I need to know.
I need to address a few things that are happening over in my Q&A box.
Okay.
Eric Pleiss says Twins didn't allow pictures at any pregame ceremony practices. I get it. I just don't understand why. Okay. Next up, Eric says that I called him a name for not running the color run, but he ran 5 miles that day. But he didn't beat me and my 8-year-old daughter. So what's up now? That's actually what he asked me. That's what's up. You got beat by a girl. He's being the bombed up place this week in place of Baseball Pirate. That makes a lot of sense. He also wants to know from Seth, what do you know about hair?
Oh man, very little. I do know that once my hair gets like this long, which is for those of you that aren't watching this on video, like a 1/16 of an inch or something like that, it starts turning it starts turning a color kind of between white and gray. So I just shave mine. That's what I know about it. I still use shampoo. That helps, I think. Maybe, I don't know. Seems to work.
Are you a Bic-It type of guy? Do you just Bic-It?
No, I use the old sheep shears and just it's pretty fun.
Because you bring it pretty tight with it not being a Bic.
Yeah, well, but I also think I'd look really silly with, like, no hair at all.
I don't know.
So I got a little bit of hair.
Let's give it a shot. Let's get Seth real bald.
It's the newest hashtag. Anyone want to start that one?
Get Seth real bald.
Yeah.
Eric also asks a bunch of other questions and makes mostly comments. So I'm no longer ignoring your questions, and keep asking them.
Podcasting or something?
I don't know that. I think actually what happened, and this is pure speculation, that his co-hosts pulled an old Jesse and the Ripper trick on him, and after he went solo, and I don't know if Jesse ever went solo, but Eric went solo last week, and now his bandmates kicked him out of the podcast. So he,
Well,
he's gonna ride solo. Maybe he'll stay up real late, and we'll give him a call in like a half hour, and we can talk some baseball with him. See if he wants to play along.
the other thing to remember though is that normally they podcast on Wednesdays, although they do that at different times depending on people's schedules. But since we moved it to Wednesday, Eric would certainly need to watch what we do before he can podcast, because I think that's where he comes up with all of his topics. He's as admitted that when he was on here. So,
That is true.
probably needs to at least listen to the first half of our show to come up with some topics for his show.
That's true. So that's why we're not talking about anything real concrete, because we don't want to
Right.
give anything away to the talk to contactors. So yeah, let's actually 30 minutes into our or 27 minutes into our 90-minute episode. Let's switch gears now and let's talk some baseball, like actual Twins baseball. Um, we should probably give us a quick recap of the All-Star happenings that involve the Twins. I think most Twins fans saw it coming, but it was pretty cool for Glenn Perkins to close out the game throwing to Kurt Suzuki. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that. Apparently, according to Elias, and obviously that information via Twins PR guy Dustin Morse, that's just the third time that a closer has come in and saved a game for his team in his home ballpark. So, I mean, it's more rare than you would actually think. But I think that it was pretty neat. I mean, obviously, a lot of things have to go right. You have to have a close game. You have to have a scenario where the team from the home ballpark is actually leading, and obviously you have to have a closer or relief pitcher from that home team that was good enough to make it. So, I mean, it kind of all came together, and it was cool that Suzuki got to catch him. I would have liked Suzuki to come in half an inning earlier, because Derek Norris got 2 at-bats, and it would have been nice to see Suzuki get one of those at-bats and then catch, the bottom of the ninth or the top of the ninth as well. But either way, he's an all-star, and it was good to see them, and it was good to see Perkins was on. A lot of times it's just a one-game type of thing, and he was very good, Glenn Perkins, last night. That's for sure.
Yeah, it was fun. The big debate after the game had to do with how the managers manage their games. Also, how Adam Wainwright, gave up a hit, and then made up a story about how he grooved one down the middle, or grooved one down the pipe, which that whole story was just ridiculous. So let's not even talk about it.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But why Jeter was taken out in the third, or the top of the fourth, I think that's a worthwhile question. You have, from what I understand, just two American League shortstops on the roster. Why is the starter playing 3 and Alexi Ramirez playing 6? I get that. That makes sense. But the point I made to my dad on the way home is, if you have 2 guys at a position, play one guy 6 innings, play the other guy 3. Play your starter 6, your backup 3. If you have 3 guys, play the starter 5 and the backups 2 each. I don't get why. The whole thing, obviously, it's an exhibition game that's supposed to mean something, and it means home field in the World Series. But the whole All-Star game in itself, the way that it's played, and I noticed a couple times that they announce a pinch hitter. I don't even remember who it was, Cespedes, I think. Well, then they bring in Chapman. No team would ever do that if it meant anything. You're not going to bring in a left-handed guy to face a right-handed guy. So how much did it really mean in the first place? Well, it's an exhibition game. It doesn't mean anything. That whole All-Star game thing is just it's an exhibition. And it should be treated like that, because that's how it's treated by the managers and by the players. And in that case, it shouldn't count for anything. But did you have any issues with Pat Neshek coming in the 5th inning? Or any other things that happened? Was there anything that you weren't a big fan of?
I can't imagine ever watching a All-Star game, which I 100% agree is an exhibition, and really getting upset about anything. I mean, the Wainwright thing, as we talked about, was completely blown out of proportion. Um, you know, Pitchers are going to pitch. I'd rather guys get in there. If you've got a guy from a team, that didn't maybe only had one representative, you want to see that player. And the reality is all these guys are good. Even those guys that are, only on it because that team needed to have a representative, those players are still really good. So, I mean, whether a starter plays 6 or 3, they said all along that the plan for Jeter was to get 2 at bats, and that was it. And they did that. I love the way they took him out, let him get out there, wait for the national TV to come back on, and then have Ramirez go out there and get him. I enjoyed that. I think that's the right way to do it. I thought what Wainwright did at the beginning, setting his glove down on the mound and stepping back. Jeter tried to get him to get it going, but he was like, nope, and then he stood back there and kept cheering. And I mean, there's so much good about what happened. And I mean, Neshek's the middle reliever. Whether you throw him in the 5th, 6th, or 7th, does it really matter? I don't know. I mean, he's been great all year. He had one bad half inning against some pretty good players, and in a pretty emotional a moment, certainly for him. With everything he's gone through over the last couple of years, getting DFA'd, losing a child, signing minor league deals, and then to have this all come together in his hometown and getting the cheer and the ovation that he got before the game. I mean, I know obviously Perkins and Suzuki got good cheers, but to hear the cheers for Carlos Gomez, I mean that was all a lot of fun. And then just the excitement when Perkins came onto the field. I mean that was just a great night. And it makes I haven't watched an All-Star game for a long time. I really it's not a big deal to me. I guess there's those that would probably agree with us in saying it's an exhibition, but if you put World Series home field advantage on the line for it, then it should matter. But in reality, that's just terrible. It was an overreaction to a game, 10 years ago in Milwaukee, where they had to call a tie because there were no pitchers left. Well, plan better for that and move on, but let's keep it an exhibition. And there's a lot of people that think once Bud Selig is out after this year as commissioner, that might be one of the rules that hopefully will get changed again.
We should mention, too, that on Monday night, both Brian Dozier and Justin Morneau failed to advance out of the first round. Giancarlo Stanton hit a home run about a half a mile.
Yeah.
And Yoenis Cespedes retained the crown. I mean, that night, it was really hard to stay awake for that whole thing. And, apparently ESPN wants a 3-hour show, and that's why it is as long as it is. But holy smokes, that thing could be hurried up and could be a lot more entertaining.
Well, and I mean, I don't necessarily disagree with the new format, whether it's 7 swings or 10 swings. That doesn't matter to me. I thought that, and I'm sure they thought that giving the first round winners the bye into the third round would be helpful to them, but at the end of the day, they didn't hit for over an hour and a half, and probably on a cold night, just couldn't get it going again. So I mean, it proved to be a disadvantage to win that first round. So I mean, there's so many things. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I know what the right way to do it is. Obviously, that could be done a lot quicker. If we go back to what Adam Walker did in the Florida State League Home Run Derby, they literally had like 2 minutes to see how many they could hit. And, it came down to the pitchers and getting into a groove and all that kind of stuff, and maybe that's the way to do it. But like you said, I mean, this is a made-for-TV production, and at the end of the day, that wins, that pays the bills, and that pays a lot of the contracts that these guys are getting.
Eric points out that they finished their podcast just after 9.
Oh man. Okay, so now I'm feeling terrible, but I wonder what they'll talk about. I'm gonna have to listen tomorrow after listening to ours, and hopefully anyone that's listening to ours will listen to the Talk to Contact podcast after that.
I think they will. I think I think I would rather hope that everybody that listens to the Talk to Contact podcast then turns around and listens to ours because that would gain us some viewers.
Yeah, we would like some viewers or at least some listeners.
Um, Moving on, let's talk about the Twins and the quote first half of the season. You had highlighted a couple things that you wanted to discuss, and let's start off with the first half most valuable player. Who's your guy?
Well, it's an interesting question because I was on 96.3 on Sunday morning with the roundtable with Lindsey Gensel and Rod Simon and Jack Morris, and that was one of the questions. And at the end of the day, I really hadn't given it a lot of thought, but in my mind, it's a pretty clear choice. Now, 3 weeks ago, I probably would have said Brian Dozier, but at this point, in my mind, it's easy that, in my opinion, it's Kurt Suzuki. He's been the team MVP so far this year. Um, he's solidified a position, in catcher. No matter what the defensive metrics say, the pitchers really enjoy throwing to him, and he's done a solid job behind there. Regardless of what, the whatever that one stat is that I hate, pitch framing. And
That's not a
I
real
think he's done a good job.
Let's just get that
Right.
out. It's not.
Yeah, I agree. But also, I mean, he's hit and he's walked as much as he's struck out, and he's just putting together a career year. And you feel glad that he's a first-time All-Star. But I mean, in my mind, he's absolutely been the MVP. Now, that's not to say. I mean, if someone, maybe I should let you pick. I mean, Brian Dozier's not real far off.
Well, here's how I'm gonna answer this question. If you take any player on the Twins team and replace him with the backup or the guy that would take that place if he were to get hurt for the rest of the year, whose absence hurts the Twins the most? And like you said, it's really easy. It's Kurt Suzuki. Because now we're replacing his good at bats and his good defense with Eric Fryer, who's supposed to be good defensively, and Josmil Pinto, who's not real good defensively. Brian Dozier, if Dozier were to get hurt and miss significant time, I think we'd probably see Escobar a lot at second base. We'd probably, with Santana not being back yet, maybe we'd see more Florimon at shortstop, which would hurt the team a little bit. But in the whole scheme of the season, losing Suzuki would hurt the most. Now, I'm not going to go on and say that he's untradeable and untouchable and he needs to be signed to a long-term deal. But the guy that couldn't be replaced in the first half of the season was Kurt Suzuki, which makes him the most valuable player.
Yeah, I mean that's another way to look at it, and it's hard to disagree with that. Whether you're looking at intangibles or statistics, I'd have to say that it's a pretty easy choice. I mean, obviously losing Dozier would hurt, and losing Mauer, even with his struggles, that's not a good thing. But and really, Danny Santana did a great job while he was healthy, so losing him hurt. It's anytime someone gets hurt, that depth gets questioned, but. I mean, we saw that Josmil Pinto is not a catcher. I know some disagree with how blunt I am about that, but and then at this point, I don't think Eric Fryer is going to hit much, and you've got guys that can play the position, but I mean, in my mind, it is a pretty clear choice as of today. At the halfway point or just past it at the All-Star break point, I guess. I mean, Kurt Suzuki's just been incredible, and like I said, it's just a great story. I mean, he's had a very good career. Except for the last couple of years. He's been a league average or even slightly a little better than league average catcher his first 4 or 5 years of his career. But, the last year or two have been pretty poor, and that's why the Twins were able to get him for what they were.
Yeah, it's interesting, too, because their first choice this offseason was A.J. Pierzynski, who was, I believe, outright released today by the Red Sox.
Correct.
And whether Suzuki was 2A or 2B, John Buck, I think, was the other catcher that they pursued. And he was just flat out released by the Mariners earlier this week. So it's the Twins definitely guessed right. I'm still going to stay on my bandwagon there and say that the Twins would be best off to trade him, get something back, and sign him if he wants to come back, and give him a reasonable deal. But I think we all agree that no matter when Kurt Suzuki puts his pen to paper again, if it's on the Twins letterhead, the Twins signed a bad deal because Kurt Suzuki is a catcher taking a absolute pounding behind the plate this year and bound to regress. Now, maybe he holds on to it for another year, but I don't want it to be another Ryan Doumit signing. I think Suzuki is a little more durable than that. Um, but yeah, I mean, for the sake of our discussion right now, the MVP, I'm taking Kurt Suzuki. I actually went through and kind of looked at who Kurt Suzuki could match up for trade-wise. The only team that really seemed to make a lot of sense to me was Baltimore. So, when there's not a huge market for catchers, you're not going to trade him to a non-competitor as he's an upcoming free agent. So that might play into the Twins' decision too. But at the end of the day, I'm still not going to take I'm not going to sign him to an extension before the end of the month of July.
Nope, I agree. And as we talked about previously, it's kind of a twinsy thing to do would be to sign him. But when you'll hear a lot more about this in Twins Daily over the next couple of days. As I know somebody who's written an article on it that may be posted later tonight. But I mean, it's an interesting topic, and we'll get into more of that too. There's a lot of guys that are trade candidates at this point, as we're just 2 weeks away from the trade deadline.
I'm gonna go on a limb and say, if there's an article being posted tonight, there's an 80% chance that you wrote it.
Well, since I'm the only one that I know who's writing what at time to time, I would say that's a pretty good opportunity that's an accurate assessment on your part.
And since I can only count what's on the front page and the second page and the third page and fourth page, it's just my guess. We'll see
There you go.
We'll see who's right.
I'll leave that one alone.
So, who's your first half top pitcher?
I mean, I think there's two. Actually, I think there's three choices that we should talk about more. But I'll just throw my answer out there, and then I'll get your thoughts on it. And to me, it's Phil Hughes. As we talked about with Suzuki, and we'll talk about more with maybe our next discussion. Free agency is a crapshoot, completely a crapshoot in my opinion. Unless you can get a guy to sign long-term as a free agent when they're 27 or 28, which means they debuted at 20 or 21. But, I mean, in my opinion, they got a great deal. It's appearing right now in Phil Hughes. I mean, it's a 3-year deal, and it could go bad, the second half for the rest of it. But in the first half, he 8 innings, and he threw strikes at a record pace, even for himself. And he's getting enough strikeouts, and he's making games go quicker. I mean, he's been everything you would want in a starting pitcher, and the ERA is kind of a little bit higher than it maybe should be, and really, in my opinion, that's because of about 2 of his starts, which I understand you can't just take starts out of a ERA and have it be meaningful, but I mean, he's really had the one game where he gave up, I think, 8 runs in 3 innings, and he had one game where he gave up 5 runs in 4 innings or something like that. But other than that, he's been tremendous the whole first half. Who would you go with?
Well, I love the Hughes signing when it happened. And it's almost like, as a lot of pitchers do as they gain experience, just decide to stop walking people.
Right.
And, you said it, even if it could go bad, or even if it goes bad in the second half, the only way that's happened is if Phil Hughes decides, well, maybe I should start walking people again. And, it's obviously more complicated than that. He said in an interview, right now I'm confident that if the ball doesn't go right where I want it to, nothing bad's going to happen. And, there's a fine line, because if something bad does happen, then you have that in the back of your mind. But at this point, there's not a lot of bad things happening. Now, he hasn't had the greatest string of starts here recently, but if he's not walking guys, having a successful year. With that being said, and as much as I like that signing, Glenn Perkins, I think, is the Twins' best pitcher, and it it frustrates me how baseball's shifted to these closers and how your best reliever ends up pitching the least amount of innings. Um, Day in and day out, Glenn Perkins is the best pitcher. So, um, I'm not going to rattle off his stats mostly because they're not in front of me. But he was an all-star, and he shut down. Even if you say, well, it was Montero and Harrison, and I don't remember who the last guy was he got out. Um, he was an all-star and he got it done, and he's represented the Twins twice now. Um, I would like to see him used more. I honestly would like to see him come into the eighth inning of games and get 2 innings, but that's not going to happen. He signed to a reasonable long-term deal. He's going to go down as crazy as it sounds after, especially the turmoil that he had with the organization earlier in his career. He's going to go down as potentially one of the greatest Twins closers, and that's a lot to say about a guy that has been on a team with a lot of really good closers. So, unfortunately, he's not going to have the save numbers because the team that he's closing for is pretty lousy, and that's no reflection on him. But I take him as my top pitcher for the first half.
Well, let me just, for fun, argue with you a little bit. First, we can talk about not liking how closers are used, and I 100% agree. But that goes back to Tony La Russa in the late 1980s. So that's a 25-year trend, 28, 30-year trend. So, it's unfortunate, like you said, because you'd rather have your best pitcher. The thing that bugs me most about that is when you got like the Tigers coming up and they've got, I don't know, Torrey Hunter, Miguel Cabrera, and Victor Martinez coming up, and that's where you go to your second or third best pitcher in the eighth inning, and then he gets through that, and then you bring in Perkins or whoever it is to face 7, 8, 9 in the order in the ninth just for a save. So, I agree with your thought. I just, it's just the way it is at this point in the game.
Well, here's the thing, though,
and
Seth.
every team does it.
Nobody shifted for like 100 years, and now everybody's like, oh, shifting. It makes a lot of sense because we know where guys are probably going to hit the ball.
Right.
So all it's going to take is a couple teams to do it, a couple teams to realize, oh, this is better, and then that's what everybody will do, and that's why closers happened. And it's such a copy. All the professional sports, they're just copycats. And if something works, it's going to trend for a while. And La Russa was it how he used Eckersley? Is that how it all started?
Yep.
So, and what was Eckersley? He was a starting pitcher that was failing as a starting pitcher. But and that's the thing with relievers. It's like I'd like to see more guys get an opportunity. It's not that he can't pitch. He can't throw 45 pitches or however it is every 3 nights. Or so say he's throwing 12 pitches every time that the Twins are winning, and he waits 3 more nights. So get him. He could see everybody in the order one time, and it would be the exact same. Only you have your closer in the 7th inning, you have your closer in the 8th inning, and then you have your closer in the 9th inning. And that's not how people think, and I get it, and maybe it wouldn't work that way, but because the way that it is, it's just how everybody's going to do it. So he's going to pitch 62 innings this year, and your bum middle relievers that you throw in other situations are going to throw 100.
Yep, and just to bring it back to topic, because I could go off about how much I hate the closer role, as it's constructed at this point. I'd say this though, and I mentioned earlier, I think there were 2 names that we could have talked about. I talked about Hughes, you talked about Perkins, and there was one more. In my opinion, Casey Fiend's been every bit as good, if not better, than Glenn Perkins was in the first half. And the fact that Perkins gets the save doesn't mean that he's pitching better. And this is not at all a knock on Perkins. Perkins has been very good, not as good as he was a year ago, but very good. But I think Casey Fiend's been even better this year. And I'm confident in saying that. Look at the numbers, look at the situations he's put into in those eighth innings. I know there's been at least 2 times this year where that scenario I brought up earlier, where another team's 2, 3, 4 hitters came up in the eighth that Fiend came in and got the job done pretty much every time. He had, a couple of bad games, but you know what? Perkins has had probably 4 or 5 bad games. So, I mean, I don't mean to sound at all negative towards Perkins. I'm just saying that Fiend I think has been absolutely tremendous. There's another point that you had made that I was going to argue a little bit about, but I managed to forget it. So
It was that profound.
it was very deep. It was very touching, I'm
I think
sure.
it
So
was probably something to do, judging by your facial expressions, it was something to do when I said, talked about Glenn Perkins throwing 45 pitches.
nope, I don't think that was it.
Oh, maybe you just had some nacho gas, and that's why your face looked funny.
That's possible. I mean, it's only been like 3 days, but it still could be. So I don't know. It
Um,
was something really important, I'm sure.
so, if you just joined us, for the last 9 minutes, we talked about the top pitcher, and in conclusion, Seth takes Phil Hughes because he hates Glenn Perkins.
I believe that if you listen to those last 9 minutes, that's exactly what you would say is the perfect summation.
Let's move on. First half's most disappointing hitter.
That this is a kind of a tough one because I think there's been several options, and it's funny, and I think we'll probably both have the same answer, and I think that everyone out there will agree. But I mean, the easy choice is Joe Mauer. Obviously, he was just starting to turn things around when he got hurt with the oblique injury, which is obviously something that typically isn't just a 15-day thing. So hopefully he can get back soon and get back to where he's been. But I mean, he's not a 270 hitter. I think before the year I got beat up because I said he would hit 295 this year. And when I say beat up, I don't mean literally. I just mean, a lot of people are like, why would you think he won't hit as well as he's hit in the past when he's moving to first base? And in my mind, it was for several reasons. One, because he still has 10 or 11 years of catching under his belt, and catchers just don't age well offensively. So I didn't expect him to hit real well, even with that move to first base. But I didn't expect this. I mean, realistically, you're thinking he's going to hit 300. He's going to get on base 40% of the time. That said, by the end of the year, if he's back within a few weeks, I still think he's going to hit 295, 300, and that's pretty solid. There's plenty of other candidates, though. I don't know what you would say,
Well,
Jeremy.
here's what I'm going to do. Because Joe Mauer is easy to be called the punching bag, I'm going to give him a pass because of the concussion. And I think that's a
That's
lingering
fair.
effect.
I'm fair. That's good.
And hopefully, he takes his time to get back from the oblique. I'm going to give him a pass on this whole year. And if he still isn't real good next year, then then we'll deal with it next year. But concussions are a scary deal. So I'm going to go with the guy that's also been a punching bag, but the one that's been the most disappointing to me because he's been handed the job twice and just can't hold on to it. Maybe if they handed it to him on like a 3-iron, he could hold on to that.
Oh.
And that's Aaron Hicks. He's back in Double A. He's been a switch hitter, not been a switch hitter. Now he's a switch hitter. That's disappointing. Seize the day, or just hold on to the job by the skin of your fingers. He does neither of those. And Sam Fuld, actually, I think I was looking at WAR on Baseball Reference, is like projected to be almost a four WAR player this year. John Heyman did a trade capsule thing and actually used the quote, Sam Fuld might be too good to trade, which I think is nuts. But
A little silly.
But you know what? Sam Fuld has maybe plugged himself in as, he could be a center fielder start the year next year, and he could be our fourth outfielder for a couple of years. And if that's the role that he seizes, fantastic. But what Aaron Hicks has done, again, has been disappointing. So I'm gonna roll with him. Um, I might even split it and say Oswaldo Arcia has also been equally disappointing.
That was my runner-up. That was the one I kept thinking I should just name him because simply put, make an adjustment, man.
Right.
I mean, obviously people can see the flaw in your swing, and swing hard, do whatever you want, but figure it out. He's young, there's no question, and I'm not even meaning to sound like an attack on him, but I mean, he had his hot start, and if someone makes a bad pitch, he can sometimes um, take advantage and hit the ball a long way. There's so much talent there offensively, but I mean, he's just not making any adjustments, and it's really frustrating because the talent's there.
Right. The thing with him is you can be a mistake hitter, but when the pitcher knows, you know, the only way I make a mistake is by grooving him a fastball, there's not gonna be a whole lot of mistakes if they're just throwing junk at him, and
Right.
that's essentially what's happening. Um, it's just it's so weird because he's had so much success at AAA, and this year been so bad for the Twins. And you know, if it takes him a couple more years because he's got options left, fine. I still think he's part of the long-term plans, but I think we both agree that long-term his best spot for the Twins might be a designated hitter. And if you're not hitting, then your best spot is non-tendered and becoming the next David Ortiz 13 years down the road and be a future Hall of Famer for another team, and then we just piss and moan about it, and that's even worse.
Right. I mean, because I mean, we see it as fans. Obviously, Tom Bransky sees it, and adjustments not being made. I mean, but it is up to him to make that adjustment. I mean, the coaching staff can't do it for him. They can point it out, they can work with him, they can do whatever they need to do, but he's got to do it. And you don't want to be too critical because these are the pitfalls and the difficulties that most players do go through. But it'd be nice to see some sort of improvement over time.
Who's your most disappointing pitcher, quickly?
Ricky Nolasco goes back to the crapshoot that is free agency. No matter what dollar value you put on a free agent, there's just a lot more risk when you throw $49 million at him. So I don't know that I need to explain Ricky Nolasco being a disappointment too much to those listening.
Yeah, I don't even need to jump in on that one. He's still got a good beard though, so I mean that
Yeah.
maybe he
You know,
could lose the beard, keep the Pavano mustache, and maybe we'd see a turn in his year. What do you think?
yeah, maybe. He could certainly try that. He could shave his hair like mine, I guess. That'd be another option.
At this point, I
Um,
think you should be trying everything differently.
Absolutely. I mean, and just to kind of bring it back a little bit, we didn't talk a whole lot about it last week because it was probably overkill a bit last week. But I know Ron Gardner took a lot of grief for some of his comments that he made regarding the last goal or regarding, players needing to come to him when they're injured, but not needing to hear every time they're sore. Which again, I completely agree with Ron Gardner in those comments. Um, and the fact that Nolasco's elbow came through pretty much, with little issue or no issue, proves Gardy right, and really kind of proves Nolasco right, and not saying anything because if it's just soreness, that's just the way it is. Now he's got to find a way to be able to get loose, and it sounds like he had that issue like 7 years ago when he was younger in the big leagues too, and was able to come out of it. And I think at some point he's going to come out of it. He'll be okay, but I mean, I don't think people. I mean, people were probably expecting him to be great because of the contract he got, but frankly, a 4-year, $48 million contract is kind of what you get for a solid number three starter these days in free agency.
Right. Um, Next topic: minor league hitter of the year, hitter of the half year.
Well, to me, there's two choices, and you can go with the prospects. I'm going to go with that. I'm going to say Kenneth Vargas at New Britain. To me, I mean, it's really between him and Mitch Garver, in my opinion, and I would go with Vargas just because he's doing it at a higher level. He's taken big strides this year. He's hit for power and average, and he's doing it in the middle of a double A lineup at a new level that he hasn't played at before, and he's doing it without Sano and Buxton, and he's doing it without even Rosario for most of the year. Another name that definitely deserves recognition, even though he's not a prospect, Reynaldo Rodriguez. Chad Allen called him the ultimate professional and gave him a ton of credit for working with Vargas, working with Rosario, and just accepting the move. So I really think that I would go with Vargas, but it's definitely not a runaway at this point.
No, this one's tough for me because, obviously at the end of the year, the Twins are going to give this award. And, I think like, okay, so who could it be at AAA? Doug Bernier has had a real good year. Do I think the Twins would call him, the minor league player of the year? I don't. The guys you mentioned at Double A, Vargas, Rodriguez, both worthy. Could Vargas get it? Sure. Rodriguez, he's not gonna.
Right.
IA and a guy like Polanco that got off to a real hot start. Adam Walker is putting up awesome power numbers. The guy that actually I don't know after tonight's game, but after I wrote the recap on Monday, Travis Harrison had actually become their leading hitter. And he's a kind of a guy that I don't know that I'd call him the first half hitter of the year, but he's a guy that I'd put in the conversation just on the fact that he's kind of turned a corner and become that hitter that we knew that he could be. The power's obviously going to have to show up. Where's he going to play defensively? Is he good enough to be in the outfield? Is he good enough to be a corner outfielder with just his bat? That all remains to be seen. But he's another name to at least remember. Like you mentioned, Mitch Garver and even Chad Christensen at Cedar Rapids would probably be in that conversation. At this point, I'd say at the halfway point or wherever this was, if it was a horse race, it's a 10-horse race at this point. If Vargas is slightly ahead, that's fine. If you want to say any of those guys are slightly ahead of the other guy, I'm okay with that. So I'm gonna not give you a name right now, and we can talk more in a little bit, like a month.
Right. Yeah, I mean, like as you said, there's a lot of choices. I'd go with Vargas today, but yeah, there's another 6 weeks to go in the season, and a lot can happen because there's a lot of guys that are close. I mean, it's also encouraging that Buxton's getting back now, and even though he won't be a Player of the Year candidate, probably, at least he's getting back out there.
Moving on to minor league pitcher, starting pitcher. This could be a real quick conversation, I would think. Maybe not.
Yeah.
Give me your thoughts.
Well, I mean, the easy choice is J.O. Barrios. I mean, he's just been tremendous at Fort Myers to this point. He had one start in New Britain, and whether or not he's the actual winner at the end of the year probably depends on how well the Double A experience goes the rest of the year. But you got guys like Matt Tomshaw, who again has a sub-3 ERA, a sub-1 WHIP, and an 8-2 record at Fort Myers. Not a quote-unquote prospect, but a guy certainly pitching very well. And then you've got a lot of guys at Rochester who are pitching pretty well. I mean, Trevor May's probably leading that. Chris Johnson's putting up probably better numbers. Logan Darnell's been solid, and Alex Meyer certainly can turn it on at any point. So I mean, there's a lot of good options at AAA as well. But for me, it's really kind of between Barrios and Tomshaw in terms of actual production, and I just think Barrios is the easy choice at this point.
Yeah, I would probably take him too. With a close, I would put Trevor May in that conversation, just because he's answered the bell many times with the questions that were always asked about him. He came into the year as a guy that is he best suited for a rotation or the bullpen, and at this point. And obviously things could change in a hurry, but at this point he's a starter. So, that's what I think.
I agree, because at the beginning of the year there were questions about his control and whether or not he could be a starter, and his control improvement and his ability to succeed at AAA tell me that it's absolutely worth spending a couple of years finding out if he can be a big league starter. He's earned that opportunity at this point in his prospect status, getting an opportunity, but also in getting some leeway because of the success that he's had at this high level.
Uh,
Whereas with Alex Meyer, I mean, his walk rate suddenly is around where Trevor Mays always was, and there were some who also believe that Meyer's future has the ability to potentially be that of a great reliever, great closer. He's got the one thing that concerns me the most about Meyer this year is that walk rate that's gone up again. So they've kind of switched roles in that way.
how about your relief pitcher of the half year?
Yeah, I don't think there's any choice in that one. I mean, nobody's even comparable to AJ Octor. I mean, he was the AAA All Star. He, for some reason, started at New Britain just because of numbers. Moved quickly up to Rochester, and I mean, he hasn't been hit. He hasn't walked anyone. He's striking out a good number. He's just doing everything, and I don't know that there's even any that fit into the category of let's consider them as well.
Well, you've sold me. I'll take AJ Actor.
That works for me.
Okay, let's move on to some things that may be a little more interesting to talk about. The trade deadline.
Sure.
Obviously, there's two trade deadlines. There's the non-waiver trade deadline, which anybody can be moved to any team, and that is the end of the month. Some of the names that I wrote down that will probably be targeted. Uh, Kevin Correa, who's been very solid here as of late. Um, I've had 7 teams listed as teams that maybe he could be headed to. Josh Willingham, right-handed power bat, which is kind of a rare breed in this market. I don't think he'll fetch much, but I certainly see both of those getting moved um, for very little, but getting moved. Then just some other guys that I thought maybe there's a chance. Jared Burton. Twins have a buyout on him, and I think if they say we'll pay the buyout and you cover the rest of his salary and give us a low-level prospect, I think that could happen. Um, I wouldn't say it's probable at this point, but definitely a strong possibility. If a team calls looking for a left-handed relief pitcher, Brian Dunsing should be available. Um, the other names that I have jotted down, Kendrys Morales. I don't know if there's going to be a huge market for him. He's not been hitting well, but he has a couple weeks to turn that around. Kurt Suzuki, yeah, I've said many times about what I think there. I had 3 question marks, and one was Casey Feen. Obviously, there's value there. Uh, how much do teams value relief pitchers? If he could get something of worth, I maybe pull that trade. Um, I'm not looking to move him, but I'm definitely listening. Uh, do you really need a top shelf setup man when you're not a playoff team? I don't think that's a necessity. Um, Sam Deduno, could he be a guy like Drew Butera was last year? That some team thinks, okay, I can add a long guy, or think that they can fix him, or still intrigued enough by his World Baseball Classic to think that they could make something out of him. Um, and then just, I don't know why I wrote it down. I think a lot of teams, just the site that I was reading, were in the market for middle infielders. And could Pedro Florimon be a defensive replacement type for somebody like Drew Butera was last year? I'm not even saying they get anything. Maybe they get a player to be named later or cash. Um, but a move like that, just a real minor move that's happening at the bottom of the 40 man. Um, those are the names that I wrote down. What do you think as the trade deadline approaches?
Well, that's a lot, so I'm not even sure where to start. But I mean, you didn't mention Suzuki, I don't think, who I definitely think we've talked about a lot the last couple of weeks, and I think we're both on the same page that work with him, be upfront with him, be completely honest with him, try to find him a situation where he can go somewhere and be in a pennant race, but make sure he is aware that you're very interested in bringing him back next year. But you have to sell high in that case. You bought low. No, it's just good common sense to try to sell high. Um, I mean, Willingham, like you said, you're not going to get much, but if you can get a team's 12 and 15 prospect, or maybe even their 15 and 18 prospect, you're probably thrilled because Willingham's not part of the plans. In my mind, Morales is an interesting case because, one, you don't want to block up your DH spot. You've got guys like Arcia, you got Vargas in the system, and I'm not saying those guys will ever be as good as what Morales is, but Morales is already 31 and he's a Boris guy and he's going to want some money, money and years. So I would certainly look to trade him, for anything. But I do think you could get something for him from someone looking for a bat. So those are the three bats that I think are, if not likely, at least there's a higher likelihood of them getting dealt. And then I would go to the bullpen like you mentioned. I think Dunsing's a guy that could actually fetch something. And I mean, if you look back in the history, teams are seemingly willing to give up quite a bit more than you would think for relievers and even left-handed relievers. So I think Dunsing's a guy you could actually get. I'm not saying a top 10 guy, but maybe a 10 and a 20, from some other team. And I think that would be certainly well worth it. Burton, you take what you can get. I know a lot of people are not a big fan of Burton, but he's got enough track record for a team that needs one arm down the stretch. And if you can find someone willing to give you their number 30 prospect for Burton, you go ahead and do it. The other guy, Swarzak, he'll go into his second year of arbitration this year. He's definitely had a down year relative to the previous year, so I would not be afraid to deal him. And then Casey Fien's the name that I think is the most intriguing. I mean, you mentioned, is it worth having a top relief guy along with Perkins when your team's not competing? But I mean, I like to think that this team's going to be competing within the next, say, 2 years. And I'm not saying 2015. I'm thinking more towards 2016, 2017. And Fien is just going to be going into his first arbitration year. So I mean, I'd rather they give him 3 years at, say, $5 million over 3 years, and then maybe it's $7 million over 3 years, than trade him at this point. But he is like Dunsing, although he's not left-handed. He's the kind of guy that can come in and you can get something for. I mean, you could really get, I think, a solid couple of prospects. You could get probably a B prospect and a couple of C's for a guy like Fien, in my opinion. So
but here's my thing with Fien, and I agree with everything that you say about. But I guess my thought is, if Alex Meyer is going to be a bullpen guy this year, let's bring him up, or bring Presley up, or bring whoever up for the rest of this year. Nick Burdi can fill Casey Fien's role opening day next year. He might not be as good as Fien is right now, but he's a guy that can be Casey Fien, and Casey Fien's value is at an all-time high. You could capitalize on that and get some assets for 2016 that might help you. Like I've said a number of times, I'm not investing anything in a bullpen. And right now we have a guy in the bullpen that has a ton of value. So let's move him. I'm not giving him away, but let's move him for a prospect. I think you could get a pretty good prospect for Casey Fien in this market right now.
I mean, like I said, if you can get a B and 2 C's for Fien, or if you can get a B plus type of a guy and maybe a C minus type of a guy for him, go ahead and do it. But I also don't have a problem with building a bullpen either. I'm not saying go out and spend on it. And even with Fien next year, if he's first year arbitration, he's not going to make more than about 1.2, and even the following year probably make about $2 million. So I mean, you're not really investing a lot in a guy like that. Whereas a guy like Dunsing's already making 2, and after a solid year this year, he's probably going to jump into that 2.5 to 3 million next year. And I mean, I just think that's someone that you could get something for without. I wouldn't spend a lot of money on the bullpen, but I have no problem with Perkins' contract. and I have no problem with going year to year with Fiend at this point either. I think you couple guys that you feel pretty good about, which is Perkins and Fiend, with the likes of Michael Tonkin, Ryan Presley, Mason Militakis within a couple of years, Nick Birdie within probably a year. I mean, I don't have any problem with being one of those teams like the Twins were for most of a decade, where you just needed the starter to go 6, and you got through 7, 8, and 9. So I don't want to just trade them all off, but I would have no problem with trading Dunsing, Burton, and Swarzak, or any combination there. Maybe they can even get someone to give you a little something for Sam Deduno at this point. I don't know. I doubt it, but it wouldn't hurt to investigate that as well. But I mean, there's enough talent. I mean, you've drafted enough bullpen guys. You got Ibarra. You've got Octor. You've got all these guys that are pretty close. Aaron Thompson's even a guy that could come in as a lefty to kind of replace Dunsing. Logan Darnell is that close. I mean, there's options there. So I would deal off bullpen. I think that's where I think they can get some quantity, not necessarily a ton of high-level prospects, but you can get quantity, which, I mean, top prospects don't always make it. So sometimes quantity is right up there with the big names, especially the further they are away from the big leagues.
Seth likes his prospects like he likes his girls.
How's that?
Quantity over quality.
Yeah, all right.
The opposite.
I'm a little uncomfortable, but it's kind of like at the trade deadline when you're trading certain guys. I mean, you get what you can get.
Yeah, but you're more.
You have to be happy with it.
But you're the opposite. You're the Megan Retzloff and Jenny Finch. There's my cat in the background. You're taking the quality all the time. You're at least shooting for the quality.
I'm shooting for the quality, but I'll take quantity any day too. So I don't know. I mean, I just still think they're a couple years off from being real legitimate, contending for something more than just the number 3 wild card spot or something like that. There's so much talent already, but there's nothing wrong with accumulating a lot more. And ideally, you do it with guys like Willingham, who's in the last year of his deal, Suzuki, who's at an all-time high. And you're right, Fiend's value may never get higher, but guys like Dunsing and Burton and Swarzak, if you can get anything for those guys, you absolutely do it. And if you can get even cash for Pedro Florimon, I mean, look at how surprised we were with what they got for Drew Butera last year. Shortstop's a pretty important position, and there's a good chance they might be able to get a C- prospect for Florimon, and you say thank you for giving me the 40-man roster spot.
So what you're saying is it's okay to swing for the fences if you're okay with always hitting a single.
Huh?
That's what he said, ladies and gentlemen. That's what he meant. Okay. Let's turn the page on that trade deadline talk, and I want you to give me the 6-minute minor league rundown. Can you do that?
6 minutes, huh? All right, well, let's start with some All-Star action. And in the AAA All-Star game, Liam Hendricks was the top player for the International League. He pitched 2 scoreless innings. The lone representative for the Red Wings was A.J. Octor, and let's just say it wasn't his best outing of the year. He pitched to 2 batters and gave up a single and a home run to about the one prospect that was actually playing in the AAA All-Star game, the Dodgers' Jock Peterson. So 2 batters faced, 1 earned run, the home run to Peterson. Double-A, let's jump down to that. In the Eastern League All-Star game, the Rockettes/Twins had 5 representatives. Kenneth Vargas was one of those. Things didn't go great for him either. He was 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts, and he also had an error at first base. Reynaldo Rodriguez, 1 for 4, and then Tony Thomas came in late as a pinch hitter. Actually played some center field and went 0 for 1. Taylor Rogers pitched the second inning, 7 of his 9 pitches to get through. He gave up 1 hit, no runs, and he struck out 1. And then Cole Johnson faced 2 batters and got both of them out. So there's your AAA and AA All-Star updates. Let's jump down to Fort Myers real quick, where the Miracle beat Daytona, the Cubs, 5-1. And as has been the case, we talked about it before, Matt Tomshaw improves to 8-2 with a 2.88 ERA after he gave up just 1 run on 7 hits and 2 walks over 8 innings. Madison Bohr got the final 3 outs. In exciting news, Danny Santana is now rehabbing this game after playing center field yesterday. He played shortstop tonight and went 0 for 4. The other news, of course, Byron Buxton continues his rehab. He was 3 for 4 with a walk and a triple. So hopefully he's started turning a corner here. Adam Walker with a big night. He was 3 for 5 with a single, his 10th double, and his 20th home run of the year. And Jorge Polanco had his 16th double. It was one of his 2 hits. Cedar Rapids beat King County 10-4. Chiwei Hu had another really good start, although his line doesn't necessarily show it. He gave up 4 runs on 6 hits and a walk over 6 innings. However, through 6 innings, he had given up just 1 run. He then faced 3 batters in the 7th inning. All 3 got on, and all 3 scored. Alex Murin came on, was charged with 0 runs over 2 innings, struck out 3, and then Jake Reed pitched a perfect 9th. Chad Christensen was 2 for 4 with his 14th and 15th doubles along with the walk. Mitch Garber, 2 for 5 with his 20th double. Jason Kanzler, 2 for 4 with his 9th home run. J.D. Williams, 2 for 3 with a walk. And Alex Swim was 3 for 4 with a walk in this game, extending his hitting streak to 12 games. During that stretch, he is 22 for 48, almost hitting 500 over that stretch. So that's a pretty impressive showing. He's hitting like 375 now for the Colonels. At Elizabethton, they lost 3-1 to Princeton. Sam Gibbons was good again. He went 5 1/3, gave up 1 run on 6 hits, 2 walks, and struck out 6, dropping his ERA to 2.30. Randy LeBlanc came on, gave up 2 runs on 3 hits in an inning and 2/3. He didn't walk anybody, but all 5 outs that he got came via the strikeout. And then John Curtis came on and struck out 2 in his inning. Gave up 1 hit. And I've got some scouting reports thanks to someone on the scene there for those 3 that we can get to here in just a minute. The offense didn't do a whole lot. They had just 6 hits. Will Hurt had 2 of them. And then your guy, Max Murphy, he was 1 for 3 with a walk. The GCL team had 2 games. We won't talk too much about them. They won the first one 2-0. Brandon Easton, who gave up 1 hit over 5 shutout innings in his most recent start, gave up 1 hit and no walks over 4 innings today. And then Eduardo de Rosario and Trevor Hildenberger or something like that gave up no runs over 3 innings. Zach Larson did continue his rehab in that game. He said he's getting close. I did talk to him this afternoon. He's getting close. He was 1 for 2 with a walk in this game. Joel Polanco added his 4th double. And then in the second game, they got beat 11-4 to the Rays. Some bad pitching. The hitting came from Rafael Valera, who was 2 for 2 with his 4th double. Maurice Minier had 1 hit. It was his 2nd home run of the year. It was a 2-run home run, and he ended the game with 3 RBIs. Anything else you'd like to know about tonight's action? Well, that was pretty much about it.
One thing we should mention is Bo Altabelli was released by the Twins organization. He was currently in Cedar Rapids, not playing much, but released to make room for the return of Angel Vilma. Did I say that right?
Angel Vilma.
Perfect. I'm going to head down to Cedar Rapids this weekend, so I'll have, some stuff to talk about next week.
We'll certainly hope for so. I'll certainly be trying to grill you very much so. But real quick, if you don't mind, Nathaniel Stoltz from Fangraphs was at the Elizabethton game tonight. He's been to a couple, and if you go to the forums in Twins Daily, he had a video, I think it was like 23 minutes of Michael Cederath video that he posted, and we've got the link to that in our forum of Twins Daily. Tonight he was back watching. He said Sam Gibbons was sitting 89-91 with a curveball in the 73-78 range. His changeup was 80-85, and he was better when it was slower, obviously, and he showed good control. As for Randy LeBlanc, he noted that he was 91-93 with a lot of movement with his fastball, sliders 78-82, and very poor command. Yet at the same time, he walked none and struck out 5 over an inning and 2/3. But maybe it was the poor command in the strike zone. And then finally, John Curtis, um, he was hitting 94 to 95 with life. Very poor change at 87 miles per hour. You'd like to see about a 10 mile per hour difference, and he wasn't getting much difference there. And then a big slider, 79 to 81. So I encourage people to follow Nathaniel Stoltz if you get a chance. He lives in, I think, Raleigh, Durham, North Carolina, and gets to a lot of Appalachian League games. So
Speaking of
there you go.
E-Town, real quick E-Town deal. My parents are going to the Smoky Mountains in 2 weeks, and neither of them wanted to plan the trip, so I said I would plan it for them. When I realized that they were an hour away from Elizabethton, they were going to be there one night, and then I was going to drive them back up through Chicago on the way home because the Twins are at U.S. Cellular. So that's all the far I got for the planning, and then they told me I couldn't plan it anymore. But I was like, if you don't go to Elizabethton when you're an hour away from it, I will be very, very disappointed. And my dad's like, I just don't think we'll have time for it. And I said, well, I'm going to buy you tickets, and they're going to be at will call, and you're not going to let me waste my money, even though the tickets are only like $5. So hopefully I can get my mom and dad's scouting report on the E-Town guys when we're down there, which will be like, oh, yeah, he played, or no, I don't remember him. So hopefully we'll have some of those in a couple weeks.
That'd be awesome.
Let's get to some viewer questions. Eric totally loaded up the side of it, so I'm going to ask you these on quick hitters. These are all coming from Eric Pleiss. 2 outs, bottom of the ninth, down by 1, runner on second, and you get to pick any batter for the Twins. Who you picking?
Joe Mauer. Been a bad year, but pretty easy choice with a guy with that kind of track record overall, and with runners in scoring position in his career. That's definitely the guy I'd want.
To which he responds, you have to pick Joe Mauer, right? Even given his first half, Joe Mauer is Joe Mauer is Joe Mauer is Joe Mauer.
Very well said.
You and Eric, you're bros, man.
Yeah, we're tight like that.
Who would you rather have pitch the ninth inning, Phil Hughes or Glenn Perkins?
Well, Glenn Perkins, if it's just for one inning. If it's just for one inning, you want that guy that's throwing 95 to 97 with that killer slider over a guy that's just throwing it over the plate with a little bit of movement. And, yeah, definitely one inning, I'd take Perkins.
And his final question, before we get to the Twins Daily questions, better manager, Ron Gardenhire or Brad Ausmus?
I mean, Gardner certainly has more track record, which his non-fans will say is a detriment, and his fans will say is a good thing. I mean, Ausmus has just no track record at all, even coming into the year as a manager at any level. So, I mean, I would just, without knowing, certainly without following the Tigers on a daily basis, I'd certainly say Gardner. I don't think it's even close.
He's been the manager of the year before.
He has, and he's finished second 5 times.
I randomly get responses to "Are you going to watch Twins Hangouts?" Liliana Frites just responded, "No, she's not watching tonight's show."
That's too bad. Maybe she'll download it on iTunes later.
Liliana, come on, what's up?
Yeah.
Questions now from Twins Daily. Lightfoot 789. I'm gonna make this shorter. What are your thoughts on this format? Here's his idea: 2-minute time limit, like they do in the FSL. The time countdown would at least give fans some form of climax as time worked down. It would also make things move quicker. Not that all the towel wipe downs, Gatorade breaks. What do you think about that? You kind of already addressed it, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, I like that idea of a time thing, but I mean, that kind of gets into, having the right pitcher and that kind of stuff too. But so I'm good with the time thing, but I mean, I agree with you earlier when you said it's really up to ESPN to decide what they want, and if they wanted to do it in half the time, I think they definitely could. I think the towel breaks are just kind of dumb. They're just people trying to get on TV, and I mean
Yep.
nothing against it, but it's not really doing anything other than making things even slower.
Didn't Perkins and Dozier go out for more now?
They did, which was kind of cool, but it does slow it down.
So you weren't a fan of that, were you?
Yeah, I didn't mind it. When it's your guys, you don't mind. When it's like Jose Abreu and Alexi Ramirez going out to towel off Yoenis Cespedes,
It
then
was
it's like
Alfredo Simon going out to towel off everybody. Is basically what
everybody. Yeah,
he was the towel boy.
that was a guy who wants to get noticed.
Last question. Kurt1965 asks Seth, have you heard anything about Tanner English?
I did, as a matter of fact. I'm glad you brought that up. He has not played since, I believe, July 6th, and he is dealing with what is being called a sore shoulder. So hopefully nothing too serious. There's nothing like any damage or anything like that. It's just being deemed a sore shoulder. So and that's one thing. I know there's a couple of guys I talked to earlier today who are rehabbing various injuries and could probably come back as early as say August 15th, August 20th. The odds of us seeing them for those 2 weeks is probably not good, just because do you really need to do that over 2 weeks, or do you just wait another month and make sure they're good and get them back at Instruct? So I kind of think there's a chance that English could come back. I don't think he's going to be out real long, but a guy like Zach Jones threw his first bullpen yesterday, um, and could be in the GCL games within say a couple of weeks, and maybe even back with the Miracle a couple of weeks later. But now you're looking at mid to late August, so again, you just have to do what's right for him, and obviously what he went through is a little different. So, but yeah, to answer the Tanner English question, he's got a sore shoulder.
Okay. Before we sign off today, I'm just going to give you my parting wisdom, and it has to do with the MLB draft signing deadline, which is Friday. The Twins have just short of $250,000 left to spend, and I've heard nothing as far as guys that they're talking to or not talking to. Um, I think they're going to try to spend that money. They're going to, throw $300 or $300,000 out at a couple guys and see if they bite. At the end of the day, I don't necessarily see it happening. My issue is with what the Astros are doing. I don't know if you have been following it, but essentially how it works is to protect you to get your pick next year, you have to offer a guy 40% of the slot. And what the Astros did is they reached a agreement with Brady Aiken to sign for like $6.5 million. They flew him in on June 23rd, I think was the date that I read, expecting him to sign. 2 days later, he left without a deal signed. In the meantime, they reached an agreement with another draft pick to sign for $1.5 million. That deal also hasn't been signed, even though the guy passed his physical, because he was told your deal is contingent on Brady Aiken signing. The reason that Aiken left now is that it's come out that his MRI showed some abnormalities with his ulnar collateral ligament in his elbow, and I've heard things like, well, it's smaller than an average UCL in someone his size, things like that. I've also heard that a large percentage of pitching elbows don't show normal UCLs. Anyway, the Astros are using that to leverage Brady Aiken to sign for $3 million. And then they'll use that money to sign the high school kid they have an agreement with and their 21st round draft pick, Mac Marshall, who was like a third round value. The Astros say they're playing by the rules. The player and his advisor are screaming foul. And we have basically 2 days to resolve this. My guess is that either Aiken blinks first and signs and then files a grievance, or doesn't sign and then sues MLB. At the end of the day, I don't think Brady Aiken's an Astro. I think the Knicks that they've signed will be. I don't think there'll be a penalty. I think the Astros will get their number 2 pick next year. And I think Brady Aiken's going to be a free agent and probably be the most highly sought after free agent. Um, he'll be in this. He's not going to get the money that Tanaka and Kano got, but he's going to get a ridiculous amount of money to sign. He's going to get a signing bonus in the neighborhood, and it's definitely going to be like a $20 million signing bonus or something crazy like that. Seth doesn't agree.
I disagree.
It's going to happen, Seth. Watch it happen.
All right. You heard it here first.
What's your take?
I don't know. He said, she said, my guess is he'll sign somewhere in the middle and miraculously the whole thing will go away. I mean, that's just my guess. I mean, I don't know.
Someone asked Jim Callis what he thinks he could sign for. He said up to $30 million.
Yeah, that's crazy.
What do you think the Twins would think about throwing at him? Twins loved him.
Well, I don't know. I mean, if that's legit, if they could get $20 million, why not? I mean, but I mean, talking about a high school pitcher here, when the track record of first round high school pitchers making it isn't real high. So to me, it's a huge risk. So I wouldn't go that high.
Well, it's because you don't have $20 million laying around.
I don't have $20 laying around. So if anyone wants to sponsor this show, please let us know.
Because with $20, if you send me $20, we'll eat nachos together.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful. Hey,
all right, Seth.
Real quick, can I go through this? The Twins have signed their first 17 picks. Number 18 is T.J. White. Had I heard a few weeks ago that they were trying to sign him, or have you heard anything close to anything with him?
He's a third. I
thought I had read that at some point.
Third baseman from UNLV. Baseball America had him signed 2 weeks ago on their transaction page. Yeah.
And he still shows up as unsigned. So I'm curious about that one. I mean, guys like Tatum, McCarthy, who else? The Minnesota guys like Mike Bauman, Brad Mathowitz, and then 3 Florida guys, Kervin Mosquite, John Jones, and Dalton Guthrie. I don't think any of those will probably sign, and they probably shouldn't. A guy like Oren Veillon, I think he's got a deal. I think it was at LSU or Nicholls State or something like that. I mean, to me, the guys that are left there are guys that are probably going to college. And if you said the Twins have an extra $300,000 laying around to sign them, that's probably not even going to be close to enough for them to get these types of guys to sign. Maybe one of those 40th rounders they could throw $100,000 at, and then they just have to decide. But I don't really see them signing more than one of any of these guys at this point.
Right, I would agree.
A couple other notes before we close out. I think it's a topic that I don't want to spend too much time on because we're at 100 minutes right now and we want to be done fairly quickly. So I've got one question and I've got one just kind of neat thing from the All-Star game. Late in that game, I already messed it up. Daniel Murphy of the Mets came into the All-Star game at second base to replace Dee Gordon. And the interesting thing that I found from that is Dee Gordon's brother, of course, was number 1 Twins pick, was 5th overall, Nick Gordon. And he was replaced by Daniel Murphy, whose brother is with Cedar Rapids Colonel Jonathan Murphy. So that was just kind of one of those random fun facts that probably only like you and I would even think of. The other question, I just want to get it out there because it's going to happen before we next meet. The Twins rotation for this weekend starting Friday is Kyle Gibson, Phil Hughes, and Kevin Correa with a couple of TBDs to follow. I want to get it out there on the record. Who do you think those 2 starts will go to?
Chris Johnson, Trevor May.
Sticking to the Trevor May, huh?
I'm riding it till it dies, baby.
All right, because I did pick him up, Trevor May, in a fantasy league, knowing I won't use him this week, but thinking he could be a two-start guy next week. So I'm
I'm
not necessarily disagreeing with that. When can Johan Pino return to the Twins?
Monday.
So I think for me the question becomes: do they have Pino or Johnson make that Monday start?
You tell me. I already told
I'd
you what I
pref-
thought.
I'd, pre- I'd prefer Pino. I think Chris Johnson's being a little bit beat up because he walked six guys in 5 innings, 4 innings at first time out, and he gave up a couple of home runs in Colorado, which pitchers have been known to do. You can't be as good as he's been the last 2 years in the International League and not be better than what we've seen. So I wouldn't have a problem with Chris Johnson getting a little more time. Johan Pino's actually pitched adequately, so I wouldn't mind him. And I do think, and this is another thing you and I vary on, I do think Alex Meyer and Trevor May will both be in the rotation by the end of the year, pending whatever happens with Ricky Nolasco here. But with Kevin Correa likely traded within the next 2 weeks, that opens up yet another spot. So we could, by the end of the month, see Correa traded, and then Meyer and/or May. I think certainly May, possibly Meyer up, and maybe Nolasco back. So this rotation, 3/5 of it could be changed within the next 2 weeks.
So who did you say for Tuesday? Are you going with May for Tuesday?
I actually am gonna say May because I'm counting on it for my fantasy league and him being a starter.
Okay. I wasn't sure if you had signed him thinking he might be, but you were guessing somebody else. You were very unclear to me.
Well, I mean, initially, if someone put a gun to my head, which I don't know why anyone would ever do, and that's way too much pressure on anybody, I would say it'll be Chris Johnson and Johan Pino.
In the other
But I
order.
really think one of them Monday, one of them Tuesday.
Yeah.
But I do think there's a realistic chance that May could be the starter on Tuesday, especially depending on obviously how his calf, but also how his arm respond after missing 3 weeks with his start on Thursday. I think as we talked about on the Gleeman and the Geek podcast second half, which you can download also at Twins Daily. If May's start in Rochester's game wouldn't have been rained out on Sunday, he probably would have pitched Sunday, and I think he would have made one more start, maybe Saturday, and would have probably been up, by the end of the following week. By calling him up Tuesday, you're throwing one game at him in Rochester, and they may want to get him 2 or 3. That's probably more realistic. But it's a topic we've talked about before too, so I don't want to take up too much time, and we want to be done in less than 2 hours. So I'll let you have the final thought on that topic.
Your final thoughts are great.
Appreciate it.
Let's get Seth real ball next time.
Let's do that.
Hey, Twins will return to the baseball world on Friday with a welcoming in, I think, the Tampa Bay Rays. I will be there. Gonna shoot some fireworks off after the game. So we can talk about the weekend. Then I'll go to Cedar Rapids. We'll do some Rockstar stuff down there. You can download us on iTunes, like Seth mentioned. You can watch us on YouTube. You can ask us questions wherever you want. You can find us on Twitter. We're all over the place. So we're going to sign off for now. We'll come back next week as we can close up the not only the draft thing, but we can also talk the competitive balance lottery will happen, and then there'll be picks that could be traded. I think the Twins should go after those hardcore. That's what they should do. But we'll see what happens. Deadline's Friday. Twins play Friday. Cedar Rapids all weekend. Twins hangouts. Seth tweets. Get Seth nachos or something. I'm confused.
Don't vomit.
Things like that. So thanks for hanging out on with us on our special Wednesday telecast. Thanks for downloading us on iTunes, and we will see you next Tuesday night.